What's going on YouTube? My name is Mr. Crippled and today I'm going to be bringing you my Smite 2 tier list. Now before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to keep up with any future content, I will be leaving a link to my Discord and my Twitch in the description below. Now, caveat to these are just my personal opinions. I do think that a lot of these guys do need some help, albeit they are still fun. And I do think that there are some items in the game that could be added from Smite 1 to help out a lot of these gods. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. On her is very strange to me. I think that on her is decent. I do think he's good, and his passive does make him one of the better ADCs in the game. I do think that because a lot of his abilities require skill shots, it does take a little bit of practice with him comparatively to other guys who could just hold R2 and benefit. But I do think there is reason to play him. So I believe he should be middle ground A. Anubis, I think, is one of the worst gods in the game. Bar none. His passive making him tankier does feel nice, but if you're building him for mostly DPS anyway, that's not going to benefit him much. You can play him in solo lanes since that passive does help him out a little bit with sustain. But as a tank, he doesn't really offer anything. And even as a DPS, because he's so immobile, he requires so much setup. So I think he deserves to be in C. Ares, I do think he's one of the better gods in the game, purely just based off of his passive and because there's a lack of both beads and Aegis cooldown times. So I think he deserves to be in A, especially since he makes everybody in his team hit harder. So, and plus having a cripple, and that stops almost half the cast in the game from using pretty important parts of their kit. So I definitely think he deserves to be an S. Athena, I think she's debatable one of the best in the game. Beads being on such a low cooldown, she's a beads burner. Team fighting presence, crazy amount of damage, can't really kill her. I think the only thing really stopping her is basically her cooldowns, but since you're going to be building cooldowns anyway, and plus how hard tanks hit in this game right now, she's definitely one of the best in the game. Bacchus, I wish I could say the same thing. He does have better, his ultimate is better, gives him more. He is a lot tankier. He does do a lot more damage, but a lot of the characters in the game can stop him from doing what he wants, and I do think that hinders him a bit. So but he does do his job well as a tank, purely as that. So I think he's bottom of A. Maybe top of B. Up next, I want to talk about Bologna. Kind of the same thing in B. She does do her job well as a solo laner, but because she lacks CC, even though the disarm is amazing, her presence in team fights later on is kind of lackluster, but she does do her job as a frontliner very well. I do think she's a little bit... I think she's probably tied with Bacchus at the moment, but I don't think she's better than him, so I think she deserves to be right about here. Cornunos is one of those gods that showcase what they want the game to be very well, being able to scale both into intelligence and strength, and both builds benefiting him the most. I do think his primary build is still going to be a strength build, going for crit and not really focusing on his abilities or how his one scales, but building him hybrid does help him out a lot. He does have the best boxing in the game, where if you try to get close to him, he does more damage. And he does have one of the better team fight ultimates in the game. So I think he deserves to be up there in A. And I do think he's better than on her, so right about here. Chalk, same thing with Anubis. He just doesn't do enough. Even though as a tank, if you build him full tanky, his damage isn't really enough to be qualified for that bruiser. If you build him damage, he's not going to last long enough. And a hybrid of both, like a solo laner, he doesn't really outperform anybody. The only saving grace for him is that that ultimate is very obnoxious to deal with, and he's still a tank, but he just doesn't do enough for the team. Up next is Fenrir. I think Fenrir is up there. Would have been up there had it not been for half the gods they chose for this first bit counterpicking him. Hades has a silence. Ares has a cripple. Athena has the taunt. Even though Chalk, it's an ultimate, he has an ultimate. Thanatos has a silence. Loki is just better overall. There's just so many gods in the game that can just counterpick him. However, for what he does, like to the backliners, is still amazing. I do think he struggles late game a little bit since he can't insta kill you, kind of like any of the other assassins. But where he shines is the fact that he's flexible, so he can be both a solo laner, he can be a support, and he can be a jungler. So off of that alone, I do think he deserves to be an A, probably around bottom of A, but still A. Hades is kind of the same as Anubis, where he doesn't have any items to really make him as obnoxious as he was in Smite 1. Those items being hybrid lifesteal items. But now what they have been doing on Hades is basically treating him as purely a solo laner. So they build mostly tanky with some damage around his kit. He's still very obnoxious to deal with. That ultimate is still not fair. And the fact that beads and Aegis, you can't have them both. He basically has free reign on anybody that he walks up to if he builds tanky. As a full DPS, he's probably more like B, but with him being tanky, I think he's probably top of B. Up next is Hecate. Hecate, I believe, is strong, but is still very lackluster. One of her few flaws is that she is a what do we call this? She does have she doesn't have a run move. She has a Scylla curse where she can do all this damage but never really confirm on her own. And the sustain that she does have isn't really anything because you could chew through it so quickly. And plus, since her 1 is her only source of real CC besides her ultimate, but she has to cycle through the abilities by letting loose the blue version before being able to get to the purple version that is the Mez. It hurts her in the fact that it's very hard for her to set up a presence, but that 2 does hit extremely hard. I think she's almost complete. She just needs one extra thing. Maybe while her 2 is up, she gets extra damage she gets damage mitigations or extra movement speed, making her harder to hit. Maybe the 3 needs to provide her more protections based off of her max mana or intelligence. Maybe the ultimate on the casting time needs to be quicker. I don't know what it is, but she does hit hard and she does perform her job well. I think she's A, possibly bottom of A, maybe even B. Yeah, I think she sits comfortably around B. Jingwei. Jingwei is very strong right now, given the fact that she does crit very well. She still hits very hard. Her ultimate now being able to hit twice. Her being able to get back to lane faster than any other god in the game. She has a knockup, which is also amazing. Her really big problem though is that she doesn't have good clear, but the damage that she gets off as trade is well worth it. I can't necessarily put her in S, but I do think she's top of A. Kukulkan, I think she's probably the best pure mage at the moment, probably deserving to be an S. He does take a little bit of time to get started, considering the fact that he had to build towards his passive, but he hits extremely hard, has a slow, can do his damage very safely from around corners, unlike all the other range DPSs in the game. Ultimate still hits insanely hard. And his real own weakness is that he doesn't really have a run move, so is a little bit of a sitting duck, but he does have a little bit more safety now that his 2 becomes a dash if you cast your 3 on top of yourself and then dash. Plus it does do pretty decent amount of damage, but just for safety reasons and just for the fact that he's probably the go-to mid-mage at the moment, I think he deserves to be an S. Up next is Loki, definitely S. I can't say he's better than Kukulkan, and I can't say he's definitely not better than Athena or Ares, but because there isn't you can't build both beads and Aegis. He just has free reign on you, and plus now that assassins or physicals do have a version of Chronos Pendant, where whenever they get a kill or assist, their cooldowns are reduced by a lot. He could basically insta kill somebody and then have his invis again and then just get out for free. And plus, he still is the only character in both Smite 1 and Smite 2 where your invis isn't interrupted. So definitely deserving to be up in S. Up next is Mordred. I think he comfortably sits probably around top of A or probably bottom of S. Reason being is because he does a frontliner's job perfectly. He does good damage. He gets more damage for building tanky. He has 2 different utility ults, one being a root and the other one being a huge knockup that does insane amounts of damage. He does have sustain. He hurts you for trying to use run moves if you hit your three, and he has an attack speed stim while also bolstering some pretty decent sustain in the one and in the baby ult. Where he falls off a little bit is simply because he doesn't have CC outside of those, but his damage and his tanking is way more than makes up for that, so he definitely deserves to be sitting at S. Morgan, the Morgan. If you only play as a base character, she's probably just B. Her invis isn't that good, and the stun you had to be extremely close to be able to get the full benefit of. However, if you have an understanding of every single god in the game and you main the Morrigan, she definitely is S tier. Um, just having the ability to burn beads or burn Aegis, be a secondary tank, be another frontliner, have an execute if there's a Thanatos on the enemy team. She's very fluid in that, and I do think she's probably one of the better mages in the game. She's just difficult, but the difficulty for the reward that you get for mastering her is insane. So she definitely deserves to be an S. Neith, yeah, I think where they messed up with Neith is that um I feel like they should have scaled her more with intelligence rather than strength. I think she should have been kind of like her Nunos, where her abilities get both strength and intelligence scaling. Because in most cases, you're going to be building her like a mage anyway, since her abilities hit so hard. Um, the ultimate is good though, because you can't get those snipes across the map. She always has some kind of presence. And again, with the beads, you can't have you choose between beads and Aegis. That does help her a little bit. However, I do think that she doesn't perform better than anybody above A, so I think she deserves to probably be bottom of B. Up next, I want to talk about Odin. Odin is weird. He does do decent damage. He does have CC, but that CC takes forever. And the damage is only good is if you get the stacks with an ultimate. But the ultimate is one of the best ultimates in the game. I think just base. I think he's B. He is better than Neith. He is better than Bologna. I think he's tied with Bacchus. Um, Now him being an alt bot, he is still very annoying and he does his job very well. But the lack of CC and the honestly the lack of actual like amazing damage in team fight presence kind of stops him. But he does his job as a frontline very well. Up next is Soul. Definitely one of the better mages in the game, if the best, if one of the best magical ADC at bar none. Um, I want to give her S. I do, but the ultimate still feels a little lackluster. It does have a knockup. It does do pretty decent amount of damage. Um, and that stim that she gets with and being high intelligence, being able to do both mage build and crit build does help her out a lot. Um, I think I think she deserves to be sitting right about here. I think she's better than the Morgan. So yeah, I think she deserves to be sitting right. See, nah, I think this spot is probably perfect for her. Up next is Susanoo, one the best assassin in the game, bar none. Better than Loki, and better than Kukulkan, and better than Ares. Better than all three of them. Ares does kind of counterpick him, so he can't really move if there's chains on him. But his easy access to the backline, one of the best team fighting ults in the game for an assassin, high amounts of damage. The only problem with him is that he is difficult to use. If you don't do the auto cancels and you're only using him purely for the abilities, he does drop a bit, probably down to like A, being right about here. But if you master him, he's one of the best gods in the game. He definitely deserves to be right here. Thanatos, best early game assassin ever in both Smite 1 and in Smite 2, hits extremely hard. Now he doesn't have to worry about mana, so his sustain in farming is a lot better than any of the current assassins at the moment. And having execute does help him a lot. Problem with him is that he is still very one dimensional, and he can be countered very easily if people are looking out for the ultimate. However, the damage more than makes up for it. Yuttins is absolutely insane on him because whenever he gets a kill, he already has a passive that reduces his cooldowns whenever he gets a kill, and then Yuttins just further boost that. So, and he has a silence, which a lot of people don't talk about, and even though it doesn't do a lot of damage, it stops a lot of the other gods in the game from being able to fight him back and deal with the amount of damage that he does. and now his one does health damage as well as healing for 50% of the damage dealt. So I definitely think he's up there. Um, I think he's roughly about here. Up next is Ymir. Great as a tank. Funniest jungle build being the bonk build. Hits extremely hard. Has the hardest hitting ultimate in the game. Decent CC. And now has mobility with the wall and ability to cut people off and still be tanky. I think he deserves to be here. And then finally Zeus. I think he's the worst in the game. His clear is abysmal. He can't poke safely. His crit build, while it is fun, doesn't. It takes a while to get online, and because you can't really outbox the person that you're looking at, and you don't have any range comparatively, there's just no safe way for him to be able to get started. And plus, lack of mobility. The 2 is nice, but it doesn't really stop any of these gods from running at him. And his only saving grace is the fact that he has a stun and that ultimate. But at the end of the day, he just doesn't do enough. I do think there are 2 other gods that I forgot to mention, being Amaterasu and Nuwa. Amaterasu and Nuwa for piss sake. These 2 I can't really gauge at the moment. Nuwa got a lot of nice changes, giving more damage to her basics, more abilities towards her basics, getting more attack speed. The passes that she gets, getting extra movement speed, the fact that she can put her entire team invisible, the fact that she has a stun, the fact that she has a root, all that is really nice. And the ult that you can never miss, hitting the entire enemy team, is always really nice to pad stats and amazing kill confirm. If I had to place her anywhere, she'd probably be. She'd probably be here, roughly about here. And then finally, Amaterasu. She got some nice changes, and it's a lot easier to understand where her kid is at, based off of her one. Definitely the better auto attacker compared to Bologna, because she gets the damage mitigations with her 2, and she still has a silence while also having a stim that gives her either movement speed or sustain and a health shield, and having a team fighting ultimate that has a stun. I do think she outperforms Bologna. Where she struggles again is basically how all the other guys can kind of like just slow her down, but she does have better team fighting presence, so I think she deserves to be bottom of A. But this is my tier list for Smite 2 at the moment. Hopefully we see a lot more changes and probably get some of these bottom characters buffed or reworked. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. I appreciate all y'all's time, and y'all take care.